welcome back. Here we are with blog 22. Today's date is the 16th of March 2022. As in keeping with recent blogs, we'll check out some stuff on the forum that's been happening. We'll go to the best one first. So, the other day, I'm not sure when this was now, a few weeks back, Steve dropped in and showed off a port of a ray tracer he's been working on. Not bad, I'd say so, yeah. So the story goes, this was converted from Amiga 3D programming in BASIC, published in 1989. So this is written for Amiga BASIC, which is a lot different than what PlayBASIC would be. So apparently he's had quite the ordeal to port this stuff. But since then he's been working on, I think it comes as a ray tracing tool and an editing tool as well. So I think he's working on getting the editing aspect of it working. Initially there's a few teething problems, but nothing too much to worry about. But that's very cool, and the source code's here somewhere too. He's posted a few different versions of it for you to come and have a look at. So check it out. It's well worth it. Well worth it. What else we got? And that's all for 3D, I think. I've been doing a bunch of sort of these blogs in the showcase. I think back in January we started the idea of converting a library called XLNT GUI, which is an old GUI for BlitzBASIC. I thought, well, maybe we could do a port of that to PlayBASIC, and that would actually give people a pretty well-rounded experience with GUIs, given that there's a bunch of different GUI components in the community, all of different levels of completeness and different sort of complexities too. This is no different. To actually use the library, you've got to dig into it and really appreciate how it works. But I thought, well, can we even port this thing? I recorded a bunch of episodes live to camera, and what I probably should have done is write a BlitzBASIC to PlayBASIC preprocessor. That would do the boilerplate stuff, and then you would go through and make any really low-level amendments that you would need. But initially I thought, well, maybe it'll take a week or 2 weeks to get through it, and it's a bigger library than I gave it credit. I think it's about 8,500 lines of Blitz code. I got through about 17 of these episodes. There's an 8th one there as well. I haven't cut the video together until I decided, well, damn it, I'm just going to have to save myself some time and write a tool that does a translation. And by the looks of this, that was on the 19th of February. I decided that this was a required thing. So I started a secondary thread about it to keep all of the conversation about this thing in the one place. If you ever wonder why I do this, that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to keep all of the conversation in the one thread, so you can sort of page through and see what was added at certain times, how it changed, etc. In old projects, what would happen is you'd have 3 or 4 different threads spread all over the forums, and they would have different bits of information in them, and people might have seen one thread and not the other one, etc., and not know certain things about the tools. We're about 16th of March today. The last version I posted could actually generate conversion of the spinning Torus code. And it didn't need some modifications. I found some more things I was missing in the translator that I've since added to it. So in this, in the 3D Torus code, it stores objects as a bunch of data statements, and I had to run through and remap these statements manually. In Blitz, you can do this. In PB, we don't have that command. So what the translator will do is it'll run through and it will find that read statement and replace it with something like this. So you've got 3 separate read data function calls. I posted the source code of that and the wrapper, etc. In the source code board, which is in resources over here. Let's check it out a bit. The other videos, like the videos of me translating this stuff manually from Blitz, if you're into BlitzBASIC, or if you know BlitzBASIC pretty well and you don't know PlayBASIC, there might be a way for you to get some familiarity with the thought process behind PlayBASIC. So here's the Torus running. Turn that off actually. Some of those the effects are actually applied in post in the video editing software, so I don't think the demo actually supports clipping, so this is actually zoomed in the video. Just to give people an idea of what this thing's actually doing. So it's a nice demo. It's got a light source ground shaded Torus. There's other 3D demos that are in the PlayBASIC community, but that's kind of a unique one. So look at the code as it's been converted. It's done a fair bit of work to it actually. Now some of this I had to manually do. These change statements here had to be replaced manually, but probably took about 10 minutes to get the thing from not compiling to compiling, and then it took a few minutes to get it to work correctly because it didn't work initially. There were some differences between the precedence of some operators, but now we know that we can make changes in the future if we want to. Right, that's the Torus demo. Pretty cool. I think the texture quad one was there, was it? This is on the back of another conversation about doing Wolfenstein. There's no way of drawing a transparent strip, but you can use the viewport to do that, to limit where you're drawing, and then use the texture quad features to draw a fragment from a larger section, which is what this video goes into here, and the code there does for you as well. So we've got a background picture. We've got this. This is that ball image we've had for 20 years. I don't know. And we're taking each vertical strip from it and rendering some with different heights. So we're scaling them as you would in a Wolfenstein type situation. The other one was probably the syntax highlighting stuff, which is a bit of code that will run through and take PB code and give you a syntax highlighted version of it out as HTML, which you can then print. It seems like a weird abstract thing to do, but it actually comes from, I'll show you why it was needed. It was in the help. This is in PlayBASIC, of course. If you go to news, which you've probably never seen, yes, we have a news bulletin inside the IDE. Just have a look where this was. Now, in these news articles here, anyone that has a code snippet in it, let's try and find one. There you go, there's some code there. So that syntax highlighter was actually used to create these blocks of syntax highlighted code inside these news bulletins. So we have 2 editors that do this job, so you can insert a bit of code, but the old editor doesn't support highlighting the code. So then I pass through the document through another editor to it colorizes those. It's a lot of hassle, yeah. That's how old some of these tool sets are. They're very old. Anyway, so we do have this news thing there. It's not updated much anymore because it's kind of very tedious using the old broadcast system for the news. And let's face it, most of the news is covered better on the forums or better on one of the social media platforms, if people would bother to look at it, which they don't really. One side effect of publishing this bit of code to do the HTML source code as HTML was that Dan dropped in and said, hey, I'm looking at doing an extension for VS Code. You know, is this tokenizer how PB actually works? And I said, oh, well, yeah, I think so. I don't know. In retrospect, it's probably not actually. It's probably when I went to write the translator for Blitz to PlayBASIC, I just grabbed the source code off the forum. It's just down here. So I grabbed that bit of code, I went through and had a bit of a look at it, and the lexing was different than I didn't bother implementing stuff that I didn't need in the output here. So anything that's the same, anything that's just the normal black color, for example, wasn't really being treated. So I had to update a bit to do that stuff in the Blitz thing. A few smaller examples there. Simple text menu, which is an older one. I really like these kind of menu solutions we can do. So we just paste this code into PlayBASIC. This one fits, is much smaller. This is the draw menu function. So at the top of here, we're setting up a menu with load, save, delete as buttons for this test. A main loop is clearing the screen, drawing the menu, returning what function was clicked. Then we're acting upon what to do about this clicked thing by name. If we run it, let's have a look. Just hover over. So I'm clicking that thing, calling the function, calling that, calling end, probe ended. And the way it functions is that, see how we have no reaction code up here? So if I add more controls, do stuff, well, they've pushed off the screen there, but you know, it'll try and call the function called menu underscore do stuff. Now that's useful because now if I go and drop that function in, I don't need to have I can add new things to the menu and not have to worry about the calling code that calls each function that we add or might change in the future. So we're removing one maintenance job from our program. You know, so I'll just, what's it called? Do stuff. And to avoid collisions with other functions in your program, the menu system just adds this in front of them, the name of the thing. You call do stuff, right? So if I click do stuff, I should get that response. You call it. Cool. Now it sounds like a convoluted way of going about things, but it's a really neat way of solving some of these problems too. Because you might have, you know, 100 menu options, 100 key operations, etc. If you can just have your declaration code up here in your menu, sort some of the stuff out, you know, have a simple one size fits all menu system that converts whatever's happened from the user's interaction. You know, did the user press a key or did they click a button or whatever? And boils it all down to, hey, call this thing here. That's what we're doing. So the menu here is just drawing these things. It runs through the menu array, works out the maximum width of whatever it's going to be, sets up a palette so you can hover over things, etc. Run through and we work out, hey, if you click this thing, return this click menu string with menu as the prefix and the name of the text as the end. So whatever we call that thing in the text here, up here, so if I change do stuff to, I put like a slash in or something like that, it won't call that function anymore. If I click it, we get the return, that's the return string on screen, but it hasn't called our function. If we go down here to do stuff and we go, well, I'm not sure about that, Still CLS, we'll go make it red, run, nothing. If I go to load and I make it flash green, hit run, there you go. Now it's a very underrated way of putting these kind of things together, and you can link complicated structures out of systems out of this kind of simple interfaces, really. These have created a secondary project too, which is really based on this thing called Action GUI. A thing called layers, PlayBASIC GUI layers. And this is going to be pretty freaky for people. I haven't implemented this as yet, but the idea here is that you'll be able to lay out a menu, you have a file menu, and a whole bunch of other menus that you like in text, and every indentation here will be a parent-child relationship. So this is a parent, there'll be a top menu like file up here, and these new, load, save, reopen, there'll be options down here. If we want to have children of this one here, like reopen has here, file 1, file 2, they would be offset to the side or something like that, or maybe displayed in the middle. Who knows? It doesn't do that yet. I was just starting to mess around with this last night. This system is a version of that code we're looking at before, with one subtle difference. We're treating the menu and the screen and the boxes as different layers. Now conceptually what this means is that we've got, go to the start of the application, we're creating a screen layer, which is the backdrop. Now we're creating a bunch of rectangles which are displayed in front of the screen, and a menu which is displayed on top of the screen and the rectangles. Now our whole display loop for the program is this. We just call GUI sync and it's going to take care of everything for us. When we need to interact with something, case in point, this is where it gets a bit awkward. We've declared a thing called a class called screen. Now, what that does is up to you. You can call it whatever you want. You can, in this case, I'm just thinking of it as this backdrop. Now, our screen needs to have certain functions. It can have a create, a delete, a render, a hover, and a mouse clicked function. Now, if you provide a function for one of those behaviors, that's possible. If you don't, like the screen, if we get rid of this render function here, the backdrop won't render. So there's no backdrop anymore. There's no render method for screen, so it doesn't know what to do. So it doesn't call anything. The beauty of doing this is that we can capture user input and have our GUI layered system take care of what is receiving a click, what needs to be updated. When we draw something, it's doing that stuff for us. We just kind of give it hints when, hey, this has changed, redraw me thanks, or hey, the user is over this box and I'm clicking on them, so change it. Now we have two different classes here. We have the screen class, which just has a create, which does nothing, and render class. We don't even need this create class, to be honest. It won't change the behavior. We've got our blue backdrop, which is what we expect. It's displaying our click messages that we're receiving on the screen. These are drawn behind everything else because the screen is drawn. That's the back layer. Then we're drawing the rect layers in whatever order they appear in, and the menu layers over the top. The GUI is working out what you're over and what you're clicking on. So we do a mouse over. Each rectangle has a render state, so we can draw the rectangles to the screen. We have a create method. I don't want to call it a method, it's a create function. We define the rectangle ourselves. The GUI knows nothing about what this thing is. So I make a structure, I create this thing that I want, and I return it back to the layer system so I can retrieve it and when I need it, when we need to render this thing, when we need to do other things, when we need mouse over, etc. What I could do is when the mouse is over the top of something, just go mouse over, okay. Go me.color equals random RGB. Oh, sorry, it's rect. Was it rect color? Rect color, yep, that's the one. Right again. When I'm over top of one, so it's calling the mouse over, mouse hover for every layer, and whatever the order is, it will return the most foremost layer that we're over. But since we're doing this during the mouse over function, it's going to actually flash everyone that happens to be over. So we wouldn't want, normally we wouldn't do that. Normally ideally we'd have an update function for when, or a mouse clicked function, which is what the menu has in the other window over here. So we've got our rectangles have these three different states. We would need a delete state for rectangles here. We need like a create, delete. It sounds complicated and convoluted, I know, I get this. The whole point of this is we want to break free of this, if maintaining the inner loops of this crap. With the other GUIs I've written in the past, they've all had a particular look and a particular feel. In other words, when you create a window, the window has these characteristics. And the library draws the buttons, etc. on the window, and you can't really change them. I guess in some cases you probably can do a little bit of customization, but not a lot. This doesn't do any rendering itself. We just have this basic idea: if this handles layers, it's going to handle input state for you. It's going to update the rectangles. If you can interact with this thing, you need a hover function for this object type, or mouse over, I've called it here. I'm not sold on these parameters. They're too complicated for most people to understand, but you can pretty much do boilerplate for that anyway. So the whole idea is you can get it to render what you want to render, which is how this menu is working. I just took the menu code we looked at that I posted on the board the other day and code up into these different behaviors. So we've got a menu create function. When we add this layer function, GUI menu, it then calls this menu create function, which does the setup code that we need for our menu, which is not complete yet, so I'm just kind of butchering it together. It's laying out the locations of things on screen for our structure, etc. And then that does the construction of the menu. And then the layer system is calling, since we need to interact with this thing with a mouse, we need a mouse over. So we have a function that takes the current mouse position and some structures about what data might have been passed back to you, basically. Are we hovering over something on this layer or not? We have to report back to the system that we are or we aren't. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to click it. If you're wondering why you wouldn't do clicking in this level, it's really because you want to have like a separate clicked method, which is what I've got here. I've got menu clicked. I'll just convert this back to what it was before. Which options did I have before? Okay, I just have a thing called load in that menu. That'll just make that one there. Hit run. And this is actually, well, this was hooked up in the previous version. So what will happen eventually is that it'll click file, it'll reveal menu options down the screen, but you're doing the render style of this stuff here. So you have basic information about where the thing is on the screen, but you pick the font, you pick what happened, the colors, you can render what happens in the background. If I click load, it's set up, it has an attach function with it, and we get this. I've called a dialog to do something in the background, and that's cool. You know, so it really is this simple to set things up. One of the big dramas of making these tools in the past, like, you know, making the pick to map converter, there's a whole bunch of them, I can't think of it. PlayBASIC to DLL, there's heaps of boilerplate for the GUI. And to show you what I mean, this is that tool in particular. This is one section of it. This is the prefs section here, and it's kind of brutal. So 1000 line GUI main, got a bunch of log writing, image console, another couple of 4,000 lines of code for that one section. This is just to do the visual part of the application. Will this even compile in this version of PB? Let's find out together. I don't know. Well, the answer is yes. It won't work because you've got various attachments you need to make. Credits, yeah. Close, thanks. Help files links out to an external location. So these dialogues here, or settings, each dialogue is custom. So I've got a bunch of code that catches where we're over something, what we're doing with it. Every dialogue has to be manually written. You might think, well, that's not a big deal, but after a while, it's tedious as hell, man. Yeah, we'll exit that. Quit, thanks. Surprised it compiled. I'm happy it did, but I'm surprised it did. But this is the GUI for this system here. That's 4,000 lines. This is 500 lines. This is the menu system. This is the menu system that's running in this, which does most of the things we were just talking about before. Actually, we have our main selections across the top, and we have drop-down menus on top of that. But to do this, I've got to, so we hover over the top, we pick this one here. Oh no, it's closed, that's right. But with this menu system here, you're limited because you've got the display is the fonts, etc. We can choose the font size, I think, but the render method for how they're displayed, it's built into the code. And you've got to, I'm not sure how this even set up now. You've got to call your add menu functions with parentage, etc. Pass some controls. There's some things for getting properties for menu items. Yeah, it's a lot more messing around than what you might think. That's drawing one of the checked box. Oh, it's got a tick box. There you go. I don't know why. Probably some option where I needed that to do one particular thing. It's like there's another 500 lines of code there. So in this main, when we set up the GUI, initialize menu, yeah. So it adopts the properties that have the current properties. So if you load a font, it'll use that font. And that becomes your font here. We're even using add resource there to do a load from memory, which is something that, yeah. The compiler will attach this into memory, it'll load it up front, and then this command here will load this file here from memory on demand. Which means that the styling of your application is going to be the same every time it's run on someone else's system, even if they don't have the same fonts. With this menu stuff here, we've got a similar call function behavior. These are the parents, there's the absolute parents. So it says top menu up here, this emulates the same behavior. So we've got like a file, and a settings menu, then an about menu. And then below that we have what these are attached to. So convert file, is it convert PlayBASIC source file? Wow, that's a massive. That's the ID for this menu function. I'm not sure if this is calling it by there or not. Start PlayBASIC DLL conversion. Select folder. Oh, there's links here, by the way. So this sprint, it's a function that has a bit of markup in it. So it scans the text, you pass it, and then can change ink colors and do that kind of stuff for you. This is all the GUI stuff, right? And this is the conversion engine to do the actual translation. So how many lines are we talking about? It's going to be a few thousand. So 28,000 lines. Now I'd say it's probably more like about 12,000 lines of actual work, but there's a lot of stuff going on. This is loading one of the projects actually. Make a PlayBASIC project. It's a very old school way of doing it. This is all bundled up because it's the two parts of the application is stored. They're two separate projects. And I've got another project that runs through and takes a PB project, all the source files, and sticks them all into one big file, to which you can just include in your project as you go. And it's much easier. So you write a library. When you're finished, or you just import it into your main project, and life continues on from there. Anyway, getting back to our layers thing. If I get the menus working in some regard to where they're useful and where you can do your own render loop, you can pretty much use the same approach, you know. And the main goal of this is to have it so you don't have to worry about what you're hovering on over. It works out what you're hovering over. It does that stuff for you, and you just got to supply the rendering functions to do things, and have a creation function, have a deletion function, have an update function. And once you do that, you're golden. You do have to keep away from polling the mouse and the keyboard directly, because once you do that, you're pretty much killing off the benefits of using the layer to manage the state. Whole idea of it's going to work out what you're over, what's clicked, and what happens when those clicks go to that particular class of object or class of layer. Like here we could have, there's not at the moment, but you might have like a function that's for catching key inputs into the background for the screen. So I might have like key down or something like that. Key down. You know, it might be this key. You probably have a structure to pass this in. Or another way I was thinking about doing it today is that since the layer is keeping since the library is keeping the current layer to itself, I could probably just supply a function where you just go, GUI mouse, a GUI scan code or something like that. And that would give you, it would call back into the layer, give you the state of keys for the current object that's being hovered over or pressed. So if it's not being interacted with, it'll just return nothing. So you can just go, if this key, in other words, if it's 0, nothing happened, we shouldn't bother about this stuff. Otherwise, don't worry about it. I'm not quite sure how I'm going to solve these things at the moment, but this is the theory. I'll chuck the source up in the forum as well. I mean, you can have a go with it anytime you like. I don't care. But I want to have some way of solving these kind of tool-based problems we seem to run into. I'd love to have a bunch of PB tools attached up here from the project or from the extra file. See how we've got a PLI tool there, which is a way of you have these kind of extra there's PLI files for different libraries to add syntax highlighting to those functions. That's a tool to make those things. It's very misunderstood, and I barely abuse it myself actually. So you can open up a file and do that. This is a binary that's built, the little tool that comes with the IDE. Since you can add tools, it'd be nice to be able to just go have your map editor, the play map editor, play object editor, whatever the hell you want, and then just run them from there. And if they're built in the same sort of interface, etc., people won't have a problem using different tools once they've learned one. Once they're familiar with one tool, they'll be, okay, they'll all lay out in the same pattern. They could just be supplied as source code, and then since we're in the IDE here, we have a little launcher when you select the tool and select like play mapper or play shape or something, I don't know, whatever it's going to be, or PlayBASIC DLL, compile and run that thing for you there and then, which means I don't have to ship it with a bunch of binaries. I don't have to do any of that crap. Pretty neat, and it fits into what we already have. Anyway, that's the layers library. It's a bit of a work in progress. In fact, it's a big work in progress at the moment. Ideally, I want to use it for this conversion, this Blitz to PlayBASIC conversion tool, which I've seen enough of, I guess, already. And that'll about do us for today, I think. Not much else to report. We're producing a lot more content. We're trying to get people more engaged in that content. So if you're jump on the PlayBASIC YouTube channel and subscribe. If you're on Facebook, subscribe to the PlayBASIC page on there, and get in there and get interacting a bit, If you got questions, etc., if you can't, I know at the moment the registration's turned off because the forum's not working perfectly. It's still sick. But you can talk to us through the Facebook page or the comments on there, or via email or whatever. Hopefully we'll get some more stuff done soon. All right, thanks for listening, and hope you enjoy yourself and stay safe.